3 mornings before Lila's birthday, the first crack appeared. Not a loud argument, not an obvious betrayal, just a single voicemail that made my chest tighten and my fingers freeze mid-scroll. Check the trust documents. Something's not adding up. I'm Adrianna Cole, 33, curator of a small but thriving art gallery in Seattle. My daughter Lila is 7, alert, clever, and perceptive beyond her years. She noticed my pause, the way my hand hovered over the phone. "Mom, is it bad?" she asked quietly. I swallowed hard. "Maybe, baby. But we'll figure it out. Together." The email contained a PDF. One line, simple and cruel. "All rights to the gallery and studio assets have been transferred to Jackson Cole." My brother. My parents. Everyone I trusted most. They had moved faster than I could comprehend, and their deceit was surgical in precision. The studio where Lila and I painted together, the apartment filled with years of work, the gallery I had built from scratch. It was all suddenly in jeopardy. The next 48 hours became a blur of obsessive work. Coffee-stained notes, scattered files, screens filled with PDFs, notarized letters, and email chains, each page meticulously examined, each timestamp verified. Lila sat quietly on the floor, sketchpad in hand, quietly noting shadows and beams of sunlight across the gallery's walls, occasionally whispering, "Mom, they're hiding something." I tightened my jaw. Exactly, baby. That's why we're careful. Every detail matters. False hope flickered intermittently. A distant cousin hinted that a minor legal oversight might be leveraged. My pulse jumped. Could this be our chance? Hours later, a clarifying email arrived. No, it had been intentional. Another near miss. Another lesson in their precision and control. Jackson arrived unannounced at the studio, his calm demeanor rehearsed to perfection. "Adrianna, I think we should discuss the gallery. It's only fair," he said, voice smooth, smile forced. I didn't invite him in. I laid out the PDFs, letters, transaction logs. Every transfer was manipulated. I have proof. A flicker of panic crossed his face. Then the smirk returned. "You've always overreacted," he said, trying to regain authority. My parents hovered behind him, smiling and neutral, subtly nudging for social dominance. Patricia Lorne, the longtime family friend, whispered directions to witnesses. Every micro-expression, every glance, every hesitation, documented and leveraged. Lila's sharp eyes caught what adults missed. "Mom, see her hands? They're shaking." I nodded. Exactly. That's why we're observing everything. Each day brought procedural chaos. Misfiled documents, hesitant witnesses, delayed responses. Each near miss was a test, forcing adaptation and tactical recalibration. Confrontations were messy and unpredictable. Jackson tried casual threats, social posturing, subtle intimidation. I responded with calm precision, though occasional human reactions leaked through. A tremor of my hands, a sharp inhale, lip biting. False hopes arrived in waves. An email suggested temporary compliance, then contradicted by another. A minor ally promised support, only to retreat under pressure. Each twist heightened suspense, keeping the audience tethered. Lila's observations became increasingly vital. "Mom, he didn't look at the papers when you walked in. Why?" Her whispered insight informed strategy and grounded the narrative emotionally. Weeks passed. Procedural delays, near misses, chaotic micro-events, but our preparation and vigilance kept us ahead. Late one night, a new PDF appeared, hidden until now. My pulse spiked. Mara paused mid-sketch. "Mom, is it serious?" I pressed my hand to hers. "It's serious, baby. But we'll handle it. Together." The stakes were clear. This battle was no longer abstract. It was immediate, personal, and high risk. Trust had been shattered. Deception had been documented. Every observation, decision, and reaction would determine the outcome. Micro cliffhangers at every turn ensured no moment of complacency. Each procedural obstacle amplified suspense. The chaos inside the gallery, in our lives, and within our small family was now a storm that demanded constant vigilance, emotional resilience, and strategic intelligence. 3 weeks after the first PDF arrived, life became a relentless cycle of emails, legal documents, and sleepless nights. Every morning I poured coffee, opened my laptop, and stared at a wall of PDFs, notarized letters, and financial statements. Every evening ended with a headache, eyes burning, yet each line of evidence had to be examined meticulously. Mara, my 7-year-old daughter, sat on the floor, her sketchpad balanced on her knees, quietly sketching shadows of the gallery's arches while I scrolled through my dossier. "Mom, why do they keep lying?" she asked one afternoon, her voice small but insistent. I looked at her face, eyes wide, noticing every detail, and swallowed. "Because some people want what isn't theirs, baby. But we'll make sure to protect what's ours." The first court filing arrived. My parents had attempted to assert full control over the gallery. Adrian's handwriting was cold, precise, and unfeeling. Patricia Lorne, their longtime family ally, had coached the witnesses perfectly. Subtle phrasing, calculated pauses, implied legitimacy. But we were ready. Cross-examinations began. Witnesses called by my parents stumbled. Tiny hesitations, contradictions, a flicker of guilt in an eye or hand, a subtle tell of the truth. Each small failure became a spike of hope for me, and, psychologically, a reward for the audience. Could this finally unravel? False victories punctuated the chaos. A clerical error appeared to favor them temporarily. My heart raced, imagining the potential setback. Hours later, the correction arrived. The oversight had been intentional all along. Another near miss. Another reminder that in this family, nothing was accidental. Adrian tried to assert dominance with rehearsed arguments about past contributions and authority over the gallery. I countered with calm precision, presenting PDFs, notarized letters, and email chains, each piece dismantling the carefully constructed narrative. My parents' smiles wavered, their eyes darting for escape routes. Patricia's poise faltered imperceptibly, a shadow of panic flickering across her expression. Mara whispered observations from her stool. "Mom, see how he twitched when you mentioned the sales ledger?" Her voice was barely audible, yet every insight sharpened my strategy. She was both an anchor and a guide, a subtle observer of social micro-moments that could tip the balance. Weeks passed in a haze of procedural chaos. Documents misfiled, witnesses hesitant, deadlines looming. Every micro-failure, near miss, and false hope intensified suspense. Each challenge demanded focus, adaptation, and calm under pressure. Every micro-detail, gestures, tones, glances, was recorded mentally, cataloged, and leveraged for the next confrontation. The courtroom itself became a theater of psychological warfare. Each step, glance, and inflection carried weight. Witnesses flinched, adjusted posture, glanced to Patricia for cues. The room's tension was electric, each micro-expression a potential turning point. False hopes arrived in waves. Emails suggested temporary compliance from my parents, only to be contradicted hours later. Allies appeared, then disappeared under subtle pressure. The constant rhythm of anticipation, micro-disruption, recalibration, and cautious optimism became both exhausting and addictive, keeping me and the audience on edge. Mara's sharp observations proved invaluable. "Mom, see her hand tremble when she tried to justify the ledger?" Each whispered note guided micro-strategies. My daughter's innocence and clarity became an emotional anchor, grounding the chaos in human stakes. Finally, the pivotal PDF, the one establishing unequivocal ownership, was read aloud in court. Silence fell. The judge's deliberate voice announced, "All rights to the gallery, its contents, and associated properties are hereby designated solely to Adrianna Cole." The effect was immediate. My mother's lips parted in disbelief. Adrian froze mid-argument. Patricia's mask cracked. Witnesses exchanged glances, murmuring quietly, acknowledging the collapse of authority that had seemed untouchable for years. Mara's small hand squeezed mine. "Mom, did we win?" she whispered. I exhaled, relief flooding my chest. "Yes, baby. And now, we protect what's ours." Victory, however, was not instantaneous. Procedural appeals, subtle intimidation of witnesses, and social maneuvering continued to threaten stability. Each attempt to reclaim control by my parents or Adrian had to be anticipated, neutralized, and logged. False hope arrived in micropulses, reminding us that triumph is earned through vigilance, observation, and emotional resilience. Even outside the courtroom, social dynamics shifted dramatically. Friends whispered doubts, minor allies wavered, small manipulations appeared unexpectedly. Every interaction became a micro-study in human behavior. Eye flicks, posture adjustments, micro-tremors, and subtle displays of power. Each observation was data, each response calculated, yet tinged with human emotion and uncertainty. Weeks later, the gallery was fully restored. The space I had nurtured, filled with memories, art, and effort, was ours again. Mara ran through the rooms, naming areas, asserting tiny symbolic victories. Each corner, each canvas, each detail became a testament to resilience, strategy, and emotional endurance. Socially, dynamics had shifted irrevocably. My parents were forced to acknowledge the legal outcome. Adrian's authority evaporated, and Patricia faced scrutiny for her manipulation. Witnesses and community members observed the collapse of false narratives and the rise of accountability. That night, as Mara sketched quietly, she asked, "Mom, will they try again?" "Yes," I admitted softly. "But we'll be ready," she said, firm and confident. The story concluded not with spectacle, but with earned vindication and emotional closure. Chaos had been endured, manipulation survived, and human resilience had prevailed. The gallery stood intact. The evidence was secure. And a 7-year-old girl had witnessed resilience, intelligence, and justice in real time. The morning of the final hearing dawned gray and tense. Every step toward the courthouse echoed like a drumbeat inside my chest. I gripped my dossier tightly, its contents heavy with months of PDFs, notarized letters, and meticulously documented emails. Mara's small hand clutched mine as we ascended the marble steps. Her pencil hovered over her sketchpad, drawing the gallery as if it could somehow anchor the world we were about to reclaim. Inside, the courtroom was already charged. My parents' smiles were thin, brittle, a veneer over taut shoulders and anxious micro-movements. Adrian's confidence, once smug and rehearsed, flickered as he glanced at me, calculating. Patricia Lorne maintained her poised composure, but a subtle twitch betrayed anxiety. Witnesses shuffled quietly, eyes darting, posture shifting, a web of tension that could unravel at the slightest mistake. The first witnesses were called. Their statements, carefully rehearsed by my parents and Patricia, began to falter under Ruth Hart's incisive cross-examination. Hesitations, contradictions, micro-expressions, a hand tremble, a fleeting eye contact, an audible gulp. Layered evidence in my favor. Every tiny crack was a spike of hope, and a thrill of justice unfolded for anyone watching. Adrian tried to dominate the proceedings verbally, emphasizing past contributions and his supposed authority. I countered methodically, presenting each piece of evidence with deliberate calm. PDFs with forged signatures, notarized letters confirming intent, and email threads tracing manipulation. Each dismantled the narrative that had been forced upon me. My parents' veneer cracked. Patricia's poised mask fractured in subtle human ways. Mara whispered observations from her chair. "Mom, see how his eyes flicked when you mentioned the ledger?" Her instincts, sharp and raw, guided micro-strategic adjustments. She was both anchor and co-strategist, unpolished but brutally effective in noticing what adults missed. Procedural chaos continued. Misfiled documents, hesitant witnesses, objections, and delayed filings tested patience and focus. Every near miss heightened suspense, making each victory more satisfying. False hopes arrived in microbursts, creating tension that kept both mother and audience on edge. Finally, the pivotal PDF, the one establishing absolute legal ownership, was read aloud. Silence enveloped the room. The judge's deliberate voice announced, "All rights to the gallery, its contents, and associated properties are hereby designated solely to Adrianna Cole." The reaction was immediate. My mother's lips parted in disbelief. Adrian froze mid-sentence, color draining from his face. Patricia's mask splintered, a micro-tremor betraying panic. Witnesses whispered among themselves, absorbing the weight of truth. Authority, assumed and abused for decades, collapsed quietly but irreversibly. Mara's small hand squeezed mine. "Mom, did we win?" she whispered. I exhaled, relief flooding me. "Yes, baby, and now we protect what's ours." Victory was not absolute. Procedural appeals and social maneuvering continued to ripple outward. Minor allies wavered. Micro-manipulations emerged from unexpected corners. But each attempt was anticipated, neutralized, and logged. False hope arrived in pulses, reminding us that triumph is earned through vigilance and resilience. Outside the courtroom, social dynamics shifted. Friends and acquaintances recalibrated, watching authority crumble. Subtle whispers of acknowledgement spread. My parents' credibility weakened. Adrian's influence evaporated. Patricia faced scrutiny for manipulation. Observers, allies, and minor witnesses all adjusted their perception of power and truth. Weeks later, the gallery was restored. The space I had built, full of memory, effort, and care, was ours again. Mara ran through the halls, naming corners, claiming symbolic victories, asserting tiny but meaningful control. Each canvas, each detail, each nook became a testament to endurance and strategic observation. Reflection was quiet but profound. Survival demanded attention to the smallest details, vigilance against manipulation, and emotional fortitude. The PDFs, letters, and meticulous records had protected more than assets. They had safeguarded dignity, legacy, and psychological safety. "Mom, will they try again?" Mara asked softly. "Yes," I said. "But we'll be ready," she replied firmly. The story concluded not with spectacle, but with earned vindication and emotional resolution. Chaos had been endured, manipulation survived, and human resilience had prevailed. The gallery stood intact, evidence was secured, and a 7-year-old girl had witnessed in real time how intelligence, strategy, and emotional endurance could triumph over deception and betrayal.